And I think we are finally live, or we've been live for a while, and I just slow Chromebook. Well, yeah, look, it's saying 17 seconds already. We're just sitting here, just kind of staring at each other. But welcome back to another live show, because that's just how we roll. Here with, I got to point the right way again, Donny. With the voice of Cornhole, and third time now being on the down and back, Mr. Eric Tscherne. Welcome, both of you guys.
Thanks for having me.
What's going on, friends?
I thought you got, with that little bit of a delay, it kind of scared me because my internet is absolutely garbage here, as you know. And I was like, can you hear me now again? Maybe not. So we'll start off, Donny. We'll let you brag, because I know you've been waiting to talk about that video that came out on Friday that I think now sets the bar for like every other bag company to talk about their new pro teams.
Listen, I think it's the third year in a row that Titan has broke the internet with their release video. The first year is when they, Steve Bernadette and Tom Gustafson got their brand new cars. And, they had the first video. And last year with, the walk-in video to the world headquarters for West Georgia Titan bags. And then this year, the 90s sitcom. I mean, come on. All I got to say is Steve Bernadette looked damn sexy in that video.
Well, it's, you had to do it some way.
Listen, he's a damn handsome man. And then, Trey Birchfield looking over the balcony, and then turns around with the 90s sitcom pose. I mean, come on, that thing is amazing right there. There's some killer teams coming out of Team Titan here too.
It cleared up a lot of what was going on in the pro division, I think, seeing Titan finally reveal who they had with whom.
Yeah, because there was a lot of question marks, right? Some of the big names did not announce, and everybody was, kind of question marking what's going on, especially with, the Jay Rubin retirement or semi-retirement, right? Because, he might not be playing, all the big events, but he's still going to be around a little bit, when he can. But there was 3 or 4 big names in that, in that reveal that people were like, what's going on? Are they still there? Are they not there? What happened? Right.
Yep.
Especially when you watched a certain contest that was going on in the internet where you could win a trip to Australia. And one person disappeared from the poster and somebody else went onto the poster. I think that got a lot of heads turning as to what was going on.
Probably.
But Eric, you are
for sure. It's well,
Team Ultra right now.
Yeah, Doug's having a little problem up there with his audio, but yeah, I've been with Ultra.
I'm having.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so I've been with Ultra.
Go ahead. I'm gonna go out for a second. And I'm going to come back in.
All right, just go out. Me and Eric will talk for a few minutes.
We got it.
Talk to me. So this is what, year 4 for you?
Year 4 as a pro. I qualified that first year in the pro qualifier, and then this year my single standings got me back in. So looking in for my 4th season as a professional cornhole player. I've been throwing Ultra bags most of my career, mostly because I started here in San Diego and they're local. So support a local company. They were small business, especially at that time. And, I picked up my first Ultra bag probably around 2016, 2017. And I've been throwing them ever since, especially obviously when the Viper hit in 2019. For me, that was a big change in cornhole, a big influence for me. Bag really fit my game and helped me quite a bit. And then since then, I've kind of moved more into that Viper R type of bag.
So this year we let go of a couple bags.
Yes.
Right.
We did have to let go of some bags.
Is that going to, kind of affect your bag decision with, bag 1, 2, 3? Because some of those dot bags are gone now. So now you're playing with a little bit different material, especially being out in, in Southern California where the conditions change a lot. Is that going to kind of change what you need to do on the boards?
Well, for me personally, over the last year, I really moved into the Viper R, which is a pretty versatile bag, right? It's not that hybrid carpet on the slow side doesn't get overly affected by humidity and whatnot. So it still kind of moves. And I've really moved almost exclusively into that bag. Occasionally I'll throw Viper, which is sticking around for Ultra. And I did get some Psychos this year just in case things get a little sticky, but I really don't need anything slower than the Viper R. And then when I've been playing something slower, it's been something like Psycho R. So those R fabrics for me personally have kind of replaced the need for dots and other things on the bag to kind of help control speed.
So now as you travel the country, especially where you're saying, where you are, those bags work for you. But as you travel the country, you're going to carry kind of the 4 sets with you just in case when you kind of, especially out to the East Coast where conditions are a lot different.
So like last year when I went to Worlds, I brought a couple sets of Vipers with me. Obviously Worlds, you're there for such a long time. So I had 2 sets of Vipers. I had I think I had 3 sets of Viper Rs. And that Viper R material that bag kind of gets slow as it gets older. So I've found that I've always got to have 1 or 2 sets kind of from new to old. And you'll have sort of different speeds because you have some that are cleaner and newer, and some that are a little older, a little grimier, that if you want to play a slower game. And then, oftentimes last season I had my Psycho X's in the bag, but that X fabric for me just wasn't really going to work when I wanted to switch to something fast. So I just got some Psychos this year as that kind of just in case I can't find something fast enough bag.
So was the X a little too fast for you, or was it just not working the way your bag comes in?
The X fabric it's temperamental. It's soup. I love the way it feels. And when it's dry outside, the bag is so soft and so friendly around the hole. But when there's any kind of moisture or any kind of humidity, it really checks up and bites. And for me and my style of play, I really don't want to get into I haven't wanted to get into a heavy shooting game and trying to pick those bags up and hit a bunch of air mails. I like to kind of keep my bag down the middle and around the hole. And I like things that kind of drip. So that X fabric, especially when those conditions would get a little sticky, I found it to be more difficult to work than, say, the Viper R. So early in the season when I got the Psycho X's, they seemed like a great idea. By the end of the season, I just had a couple different sets of Viper R's that kind of played a little differently depending on how they were broken in.
So now do you I know sometimes when some of those materials get a little too broken in, some people break out the clothes shaver and do some other stuff with the bag. Do you do any of that, or do you just kind of switch the bag and play a different one?
I've gotten very lucky over the last few years, and you can see behind me, I've got tons and tons of bags.
Just a couple.
Yeah. And last season with the Viper R, I kept getting a new set every so often. So I kind of retired them as they got too old and too floppy and too dirty. I just was like, well, that one I'm not going to play with anymore. Right. So those issues that people have with some of those materials, I wasn't looking to try to generate more longevity out of my personal sets of bags. But again, I'm in a different situation having a sponsor that, provides me with more than what I need in terms of the bags that I'm going to play.
All right. I love that because listen, here's the thing. A lot of people try to play one bag for an entire season, right? But when you're at the pro level, it's a lot different, right? Because you have to adjust the bag to the game, not just the game, but the temperature, the board conditions, are you on the main stage? Are you on a side stage, right? There's so many other factors. So, sometimes you got to switch that bag out earlier than what anybody wants to.
Yeah. I mean, last year, we talked about it quite a bit. We had obviously a bunch of different bags between him and I. And we were, like I said, very, very focused on something like a Viper R. But we would move as the tournament got later. We'd often move to a newer, cleaner, what we would refer to as a faster set of Viper Rs. We're like, hey, let's switch out now to something with a little bit more speed, because as the day goes on, as you get tired, as the board conditions get a little stickier, as the temperature in the room seems to go up because the situation is getting more tense. There'll be less people in the room and it'll feel hotter. So obviously that's just stress and all of that. That's a big part of the game. But as those, for us, as the conditions and as the stress would go up, we would oftentimes want a slightly faster bag. So we would make a change to either a faster Viper R or something else.
Well, you also gotta factor in, if you get up against another Viper player, you might need a different color.
Yeah, and especially with the way that we handled bags last year at Ultra, and as the way we're handling them this year, all of our pro players are getting bags that are TV approved. There should be no concerns for them when they take that bag and they get to TV. So they are the slow side material color often dictates the majority of the fast side color, and things like that. So last season in particular, I didn't particularly love my bags because I was like, oh, they're not as cool as they could be. And that actually helped me quite a bit as a player, because I stopped wanting to throw the bag that I thought was the coolest in my bag. And I started looking at them like a golf club or a tool. And I was like, yeah, I just need the blue ones because they're faster than the red ones. Or if I ran into another, Viper R player or somebody else with a similar material, if I had to switch from red, I was like, I'll just go to the green ones, not a big deal. Right. Or I can go to the light blue. Like, it wasn't that hard for me to make that switch, because I always had a couple sets, and, they were all sets I was breaking in and playing with at home. I was rotating through them. I would show up at a blind draw and I'm like, I'm just going to play this bag tonight. And I just did.
So speaking of cool bags, like, color and feel is really big to a lot of players, right?
Yeah.
So what is your ultimate colorway of a bag?
This year the team did a pretty good job. I mean, I got some green Viper R's or some green Vipers with purple on them this year. I kind of dug those. I got some. I've been breaking these in today. These are like the light blue Viper R. My code, my discount code for apparel was used the most at Ultra last year. So a couple of different times I got some special Viper R's that kind of had a couple of little extra looks and feels on them, got a couple extra details. Those bags are probably my favorite, those two sets. I got a set of kind of black and gray ones with some lime trim on them. And I've got a set of, call my Ohio State bags, because they're kind of two-tone red with, the gray trim on them, which is pretty nice.
So Eric, one of our goals tonight is to talk about sponsorship.
Yeah.
So why don't you drop us that code?
Well, so my code is Ultra Pro Tscherne, TSCHERNE. If you use that code for any apparel on our site, it gets you 10% off, which, it's kind of basically free shipping, if you will. And it's a nice discount. We've got some new cool jerseys that we just dropped. New Viper jersey that everybody is talking about. It's going to be a real popular one for us based on the sales I saw on Friday. So, hit up that ultracornhole.com. We're going to have a bag launch. I think it's a Psycho R on Sunday. New navy color. Really cool.
Yeah, there's one guy on Team Ultra that likes to throw these like baby blue and orange bags after some crappy football team. I don't know what he's thinking. Yeah, new guy. The new guy.
Some sort of king, though. I heard he's a king of something.
Yeah, maybe he was a king in a past life. You might have heard of him. I don't know.
Some secondary king of some secondary kingdom.
Yeah, king. Another 3-letter organization. I don't know what it's called.
But that's speaking of that drop on Sunday.
Yeah, the drops on Sunday. 6 p.m. Pacific.
Yeah, so the guy with Derek Barrett from the Newfoundland. I think is anyone else getting like a feedback here?
No, you're okay. You're almost in the broadcast.
Okay. Yeah, well, it's me. But he's the Newfoundland. He likes the Ultra bags.
We have a number.
I know he was excited.
Well, no, you did pick up some killers. I mean, honestly, the guy we're talking about is Jeremiah Ellis. He's a killer. He's a great player. I've known him for many years. I've done some stuff with that other 3-letter organization. I don't want to mention it because I became friends with Stacy again at Spencer's. So nice. I don't want to be kicked out from backstage again. But no, but Jeremiah Ellis and some of the other players, like Ultra's put a pretty tough team together this year.
Yeah, I think in working with Ultra, I actually work at Ultra these days now. They employ me as well as sponsor me and take care of me. I'm not super involved in the team. That's Mark, and we have a team manager and another guy. We call him the Riches. Rich and Mark kind of put the team together. And this year they kind of went with a different philosophy, focusing on, trying to put together a couple of teams that could really compete at the highest level for us. And then we spread out some other things to kind of cover different regions and handle different things to keep ultra on podiums across the country. So, we are excited to add Jeremiah. I'm excited because I like Buckeyes. Being an Ohio guy as a native.
Yeah, he's an okay guy. Listen, I'm not going to say much about him because it will go to his head.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet him at Spencer's. Good dude. I like the pairing with Ryan Hart. Ryan Hart had a really strong sort of back third of the season, if you will, as a pro. And so they're really poised to, potentially break out and be kind of, a good team for us. And obviously we went out and went big with the Devin Harbaugh and Kyle Malone pairing, which is pretty neat. Seeing those two guys kind of throw together, very similar, incredible shot makers. That should be a wild team for us. And then we've got some really cool sleeper teams.
Who was that?
So we had Harbaugh and Malone playing together.
Devin, I've never heard of Devin.
Yeah. Some guy, shot of the year a couple of years ago. But it'll be nice to add those guys to the team. And then we brought back a couple of, teams that stuck together, seeing Tyler Parent and Brevin Valdivia going into their 5th season together. I don't know that there are very many pro doubles teams that have been together as long as Tyler and Brevin. And so that's pretty exciting to see them continue to push.
The one that was with longer just broke up.
Who's that?
It was Hisner Henderson was probably the longest.
Yeah, that goes back to the original seasons.
That goes way back before our 3-letter organization that we all play in. I mean, that was a pairing from a long time ago.
Yeah. And we also kept and we brought back Nick we'll call him Team Nabs, Nick Williams and Andrew Labrador. Our guys up here in California, they had a really good season last year as a doubles team, kind of moved up the ranks a little bit, and they really started to show out kind of late. They were deep in the brackets most of the time, just kind of off TV here and there. Wherever they lose, they would sort of end up not on the streaming courts until very, very late in a tournament. But they were consistently at the end, which is pretty nice to see.
Well, and that's the hard part too. So, I was out at Spencer's and I was doing the Titan live feed court with Ben and those guys. And, Mark and his team were on the ultra court across from us. And it's tough because, some of the live feed courts, everybody thinks like it's like pick and choose, but sometimes it's just the way the bracket falls, right? Like you can't really just be put on the live feeds to be put on the live feed.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time, maybe 3-4 years ago, where it seemed like they were cherry picking the bracket to find the cool matchups and put them on. But at this point, the live feed is largely the winner's bracket until the winner's final is done. So until you get to that king seat game, and then they just jump to the loser's bracket on one side. It's random which side, and they just stick with it until those last 3 or 4 games on the loser's bracket are completed, and we're back at the championship.
Well, and that's hard because, look, someone that does a lot of live feeds, I mean, it takes, you could have a half an hour, 45 minutes of dead air. So you got to go off the air and try to bring the live feed back. So it makes it even harder.
Yeah, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. And then we also miss some fun games, right? Because if you get a second round matchup on the, on a high number game in the, bracket, on the winner side of the bracket, one of those teams that people are interested in seeing is going to be in the losers bracket now for a long time. And they won't get back to the streaming court until those later rounds.
Well, the thing with it is too, like my big thing on Spencer's too, I wanted to try to carry a lot more of the California people because, a lot of we saw a lot more California people kind of, coming into the live feed. So how do you want to keep that going, right? Because you want the streams, you want it to work.
Yeah, I mean, you got some time zone issues with it, if you're running late games, right? And Spencer's is wild because you could be playing 8-9 o'clock at night for like women's doubles on, Friday night, and you're playing at some odd hours. 9 o'clock. It's a midnight. Who's watching on the East Coast? I mean,
Eric, I'm on the East Coast. I left my house at 3 a.m. on Thursday. I got out to California at noon your time. So that's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I then had to wait 3 hours for my partners to land. So now I'm at 6 o'clock. And then we didn't get to Spencer's to set up until like 8 o'clock my time because California traffic. So now I've already been up like half the day. And then, of course, I got to crush 1,000 beers that day. So, I mean, it was a crazy day.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely.
None of my. Yeah, my mic here is totally off. But
you better now without the headset.
You got one other guy that I want to talk about that's going out there who's an elite player. Is Jaden Ellis.
Yeah. Yes.
Almost said Jeremiah.
He's already up.
It's another Ellis, unrelated.
Unrelated, but they played a lot. They battled hard this year against each other.
Yeah. Jaden's a young gun. What's he, like 15 years old, out of Michigan? He's been throwing ultra for a couple of seasons now. He's been on our advanced team. And so we definitely want to keep him as we moved into that elite thing and see where that whole, ACL elite tour or whatever that is going. So we did back Jaden in that a little bit this year to see where he might show up. And kid's good. Kid's real good. Had a really solid Worlds, kind of won almost every event that sort of didn't count, if you will, in order for him to secure that pro card. But it was impressive. It was absolutely impressive because he was beating the best of the best, whether it was singles or doubles or high school doubles. He was mowing everybody down. So,
well, even with that pro card, he was right there. I mean, he just finished just one step behind to get, in his
one junior behind. And I would have liked to have seen him for whatever reasons he made personally, and I don't know, because I don't work with him on the team. He made the choice to forego the PDC last year.
Yeah.
And with that choice, we didn't get to really see him battle those other juniors in the PDC.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there was, Vincent Frisch obviously took that PDC opportunity, very big jump personally in that, and leveraged that to get his pro card.
Yeah, no, and that's the big thing. I mean, that's the hard part right now, because there's so many straight killers coming out right now, right? When you really look at it, you've got so many pros that didn't make it this year and tried to remake it back in and maybe have to go through Diamond and through Elite, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, it's getting crazy out there right now, trying to, get into the pro division.
Mm-hmm. Well, with 250 players, I think I saw those guys from Cornhole DB do some stats. That Noah Bouillon guy out of Colorado has been doing a lot of stat work with things. What he kind of noted was that, the ACL pros, with 250 pros in the ACL based on the 333 million players or people in the United States, not even including Canada. That's like 0.75 ACL pros per million player, or per million people in the United States. So, you're talking about 1 in a million.
Wait a minute. Is Canada part of this?
Well, we got 3 guys from up there, I was on a team last year with Connor Weiss. Connor's a good dude,
I love them all to death. I just gotta.
May not be a part of this here, but the way I'm part of it.
Don't worry, Doug. I got you, boo. We'll keep this rolling.
Yeah,
so, Eric. Last year, 202 over in overall open.
Mm-hmm.
You were 57th in doubles with Ty Lopez.
Yep.
122 in singles. So this year, who is your partner, and where do you guys think you'll finish this year?
Well, Ty and I split, and I'm going to be playing next season with Evan Vanos. He's a hotshot kid out of Michigan, Grand Rapids area, so a little bit closer to the Chicago side than the Detroit side.
Pretty close to Canada.
Yeah, all the Great White North. And we're excited to see where we can go. We haven't really played a tournament yet together, so we haven't really put any specific goals on it. Obviously, we're going to want to get, and we're going to want to hit it hard. And in my 4th season, I think I finally settled in. You'll see those stats were kind of getting better every season that I played as a pro. And I kind of, as a player last season, all around had my best season. And I'm looking to improve on that personally, which I think will only help us in doubles, and I think Evan's going to be looking to try to, make a name for himself, and he's going to looking to be coming out strong. I like that when playing with young players. 2 years ago, I played with Moses Zazueta. He burst on the scene. It was awesome playing with that guy. He really taught me quite a bit about what was capable with a bag, right? Because the young shooters are going to do lots of stuff. They're not afraid to just shoot, right? Whereas some of us older players, we might be trying not to give up points, playing in a couple of almost more defensively. Whereas Moses was like, yeah, I think I can, I can collect that and split those. And he would do it. And then I'm like, well, now I can do it. I've seen it. Why not? Right. So
we grew up in the duck cloth era, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, we were more like keep the board dirty, block, push, right? And then airmail. It wasn't this roll bag. It wasn't this cut shot. None of those shots existed, when we first started playing. So, do you see yourself, because you're a big part of Team Ultra. Do you see yourself as kind of an ambassador or mentor for some of these younger players?
Well, I mean, that's definitely part of it. I think, when Mark was kind of, feeling out some of the players that wanted to be with Ultra, talking to me about players that I might want to play with, what I had done with Moses in terms of helping mentor him, particularly in the beginning of the season, when he was just like green behind the ears. I think Mark recognized that and thought that that would be a good fit for a guy like Evan, right? Like, hey, Evan, I'll meet you at the lobby at, this time in the morning. Let's get breakfast and then go over and practice, right? Because I need a little bit of warm-up time, right? I'm not going to roll in to a tournament 5 minutes before and be throwing, my best game most of the time. I'm going to need, at least 4 or 5 down and backs I'm going to be looking for. So, reality and that professionalism and some of that experience that I have coming through the pro division, this being my 4th season, I think will be helpful for a guy like Evan as he tries to navigate his first season as a pro.
So when you talk about your down and backs, right? You say you need 3 or 4 or 5 down or backs, right?
Yeah.
What are you throwing? What? Not the bag. What do you to go to warm up? Are you going for the hole every time? Are you trying to throw a block? Are you trying to throw some airmails? What's your practice routine?
Well, my practice routine, it continues to morph and change. 2 years ago, I wanted to get into the room and just start throwing my bags in the hole, get as many bags in as I could, get that PPR up. Still, that's very important to me. If I get out there and I start warming up and I'm not getting bags in the hole, I'm going to mentally not necessarily be where I need to be. A lot of warm up isn't just about getting, is more than just getting loose or even more than getting dialed. It's about getting mentally right. And so for me personally, I've learned that I've got to get to a point where I'm happy with what's happening with my bag and what's happening on the board, and that I feel confident going into my first game. That's more important than anything. So I am going to shoot some airmails. I'm going to try to shoot a bunch of slide shots. I want to try to get to a pace that I'm comfortable with. And I'm going to be looking probably to play with, a couple of different guys that, I feel comfortable warming up with, because most of the time, especially singles, when you're warming up as a pro for singles, there's not enough boards for everybody to play singles only, and be warming up. You got 250 players. That's 125 sets. We might have 80 in the room. So at some point you're going to be doubling up and throwing, back and forth, and you're going to want to be playing next to somebody who maybe who's throwing a kind of game that you feel like you're confident tossing against, even though it's just warm-ups, right?
Yeah, and that's tough, right? Because it becomes that mental challenge, especially where, sometimes, especially in singles, you win your first 2 or 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you deepen the bracket and maybe you have a half an hour, 45 minutes to wait.
Yeah.
There isn't a lot of room to go practice and stay warm. So
yeah.
How do you mentally stay in that?
Well, I think I've learned to pace myself through that. I used to always go try to find a board and, after 4 or 5 games have been played, 4 or 5 rounds have been played, they do start to pair up or parse out a little bit, and there'll be some boards, right? There's only so many games happening at the same time. Obviously, in singles, it's a little bit tougher. And most of us are pretty chill as players. So when you get to the board, if you're like, hey, can I get 2 or 3 down and backs? You're going to have rarely are you going to have somebody like, nope, rules are 1. Enjoy. You kind of get that, there's a certain gentleman's component of the game still, even with the trash talk and some of the aggressiveness that's starting to come into the sport. There's still an undercurrent of this is a gentleman's game. So you really do want to beat the guy when he's playing his best, because if you beat the best player in the world and you can tell he's in an off game, did you really beat the best player in the world? Or did you just catch him at the right time? Right.
Well, that's the thing. And listen, when I was in Albany, I was standing beside the boards, and Matt Guy looked at me and goes, I got to go to the bathroom. Can you just throw my bags a couple times for me? I'm like, no, I can really throw them, but I might ruin them because I can't throw them as good as you can.
Well, you didn't want to put your funk on them.
Yeah. Listen, I didn't want to put any bad juju on them. No, that's great because honestly, like when you start talking like nationals, you start talking like the pro division. It's a lot different than when you're at opens and some other stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think as kind of as a brand ambassador and an ambassador to the game, you're probably very different at opens, right? Trying to invite people in and get them talking and understand, bag technology and the game itself.
Yeah, I mean, as you kind of look at the different levels of tournaments, all the way from local to national, the nationals, they're pro only. Everybody in the room's got a bag sponsor or a preferred bag. Nobody's in there trying to buy bags. That's just not happening at the national level. Those players are already pretty committed. And even when you get down to the brackets at an open, particularly the tier 1 bracket, those players are all pretty good players no matter where you're going. That's a high level of cornhole. And some of the best players, in that regional area or that large 3-state, whatever you'd want to call it. They're not necessarily looking for bags, but all of those players in tier 3 and tier 4, and as you go to your state tournament and you start looking at the comp players and you're moving down in through the brackets or through the different divisions, and especially on like a local, when you start going to the local blind draws and things like that, those are players who are very interested in talking to you about how to shoot a shot. They're very interested in picking your brain, throwing a couple of down and backs with you, and asking about bags. And that's where like a player like myself, like I'll still bring my Zuka to a lot of local events because I'll have 1 or 2 sets of I'll have like almost 1 set of everything Ultra has in my bag because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to run into. But it's San Diego, and if somebody comes up to me and is like, hey, I want to throw this bag X, I'm like, well, I got this Ultra one, it's kind of the same, let's throw that, right? And that gives them an opportunity to experience an Ultra bag for the first time maybe, and I can kind of talk to them about why it works or doesn't work, and for their throw.
Well, and that's the same thing, right? I don't throw Ultra, but I throw another different bag. I don't know if you see it here behind me, but I do the same thing. I'm not a pro. I will never be a pro. Like, I just don't have that much concentration. But like the same thing for me, when people kind of show up at the boards and they're talking about like the different bags that they throw, trying to talk to them about, okay, this is equal to this. This is equal to this. Like, the brand name's different, but they're the same kind of bag. Try it.
You can find some bags that have a similar fabric on one side, and you can tell somebody like, hey, the bag that you like right there, that bag's got this Ultra bag, this side will work for you. If that's the side you're throwing 75-80% of the time on your bag, let's throw my bag, but this is the side you should toss because it's the same as what you're tossing.
So I travel with when I'm in the car, I probably have about 20 sets with me of
your gas mileage is affected by that, by the way.
It used to be, Eric, used to be almost 200 sets. So yeah, gas mileage was pretty bad. But when I'm on the bike, I usually have about 10 sets with me, which is almost the entire pro lineup of bags. But you know what? When we're out there, kind of our job, your job's bigger than mine because you're getting paid to be the pro. I'm not. But it's about having people be able to test the bag and play with them.
Yeah.
And say, listen, here, if you like this bag, try this bag. And be able to get comfortable and maybe try some different things, because I look at a blind draw as practice.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to
Mhm.
try some different shots. I'm going to throw an air rail where I shouldn't. I'm going to try a push
Mhm.
shot maybe where I shouldn't. But there's too many people out there right now that get too tied up in the $10, $15 blind draws that
Mhm.
are worried about their podium and their picture at the end of the night.
Yeah. That's
So
definitely true.
it's exactly true. So when we talk about that, so this year, in this calendar year, there is one big rule change. And I think it's going to cause a lot of controversy in the pro ranks.
And what's that?
That is the step rule has changed.
Yeah.
So as a pro, do you have a step throw, or do you kind of use stationary more often than not?
I'm probably stationary 70-80% of the time. I do step here and there, especially like if I need to start going forward, right? If I find myself rocking back, if I find myself, when you're throwing, you're like, don't go off the back. A lot of times you'll rock a little back in your throw. And in that motion, that little bit of the wrong way movement it'll show up 27 feet, 30 feet away where that bag is landing, right? And it'll be more pronounced than it is at the origin in your swing. And so I will, at that time, I will introduce sometimes a small step. It's kind of like Frank Modlin's step. You'll see me kind of rock forward, go, step over the line once or twice just to kind of get my forward momentum going again. So I'll use that. Big pushes. I will definitely on a big push, especially because the rules had allowed, there was no reason not to go over that front line. This year, I think, I've watched in the off season in particular, I took a good month of August off other than Spencer's. And then in September, I started kind of dabbling back in the last few weeks. And I was at a tournament playing singles. And one area where I saw a player violate what would be the new rule as of Sunday, as of tomorrow, was sideways in the box. So it's a big lefty. He was going for a real wild kind of, left to right movement.
Like a hook?
Like a hook. And he was standing way out to the left of his box. And he ended up in my box. And I'm like, you're not in your box anymore. And you got to drag that foot. It's got to stay on that side. One of them has to.
Well, he broke two rules because he was outside of his box and he crossed the center line.
No, he was I was on the court next to him.
Oh, okay. I thought he was in your lane.
No. I was on the court next to him, and okay. he nearly crashed into me. I had to reset. I was getting ready to throw, and then
he's got like a Tim Wakefield knuckleball kind of way.
He was trying to come way across his body with a big outside swing. I don't know what he was trying to pull. He's a really good player, but he's got happy feet.
Yeah,
right.
But that's the big thing this year, though. So how do you like the new rule, right? There's the addendum to the rule where you have to have 1 foot left in the box before you release. But the rule above it is a little ambiguous, which says you can't leave the box at the same time. So what if my foot slides?
To me, my interpretation is that plant foot, the foot that is in the box when you release the bag, has to remain in the box through your motion, right? So like a guy like Frank Modlin, who doesn't have a big step, he's got a little, 12 to 18 inch step, right? When he steps over, he steps right back, over, back, over, back. That type of a throw is completely protected. He's got no real issues, and you don't really see a guy like that go for a big wild push too often where he's going to stumble 2 feet into the lane. My understanding is if you stumble into the lane and out of the box, that is, you've broken the rule at that point.
Well, wait a minute. It gets a little ambiguous because I have the rules right here in front of me.
I see you've highlighted them.
I highlighted. I have some talking points. So 4.A.IV, which in Roman numerals is 4. Upon release, the bag during a pitch, a player must have at least one part of the foot inside the pitcher's box with contact to the ground and not across the foul line. So that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
But then you go down to 4.A.V.5.C. Like, this is like a legal document. Jesus. Whoa.
Yeah.
Additionally, when using the follow-through step, players must keep 1 foot in maintained contact with the ground behind the foul line within the pitcher's box. If both feet follow through past the line, a player does not keep a foot planted inside the box when utilizing a follow-through step. The player will be penalized in the same manner as a foot foul as outlined in 4.A.V.
So my understanding is what you just read is that foot has to stay in the box. If it doesn't stay in the box, there's the penalty, right? And they actually instituted a rule, for people who essentially physically can't stay in the box.
Yes.
Because they are not like everybody else.
Players with disabilities that prevent them from keeping 1 foot planted are allowed and able to follow through fully beyond the foul line as long as the release takes place behind the foul line.
Yeah, because, I think, obviously the ACL is about everyone can play and everyone can win. And if you can do this, if you can start behind that foul line and your throw is a kind of jump throw, and you don't have the same dexterity as, the other players have, they're not going to penalize you. What's wild are children, because children all jump throw. They're not in the box when they release.
Listen, most
of them are floating above it somewhere.
I know a couple that do it, and I've watched them throw. But the big thing is, what is that going to do for, conference directors, regional directors? Because if people start calling it more and more, how can you be in more than one place at once?
Well, the reality is I feel terrible for all directors from the national level all the way down. Most of these guys get into the sport and they take on the role of directing because nobody else will, and they want to run an event because they want to bring their friends together and they want to have some fun. They may make a few dollars off of it, and I mean a few dollars. Like most of these guys are not making more than $100.
Pennies.
Yeah, they're not making what their time is worth. So anybody who complains about that, it's just stupid. And then on top of it, now we're asking them to be referees. We're asking them to have all the rules memorized. We're asking them to do all these things, right? I mean, I have a really good friend who's the director. He's the West Coast Conference director. And I ask him all kinds of stuff. And a lot of times he just looks at me like, really? Like with the bag measurements, like, I can't tell you how many times early in this past season, I went to a regional. It was outside of my local area. And I went to a regional, and a guy tried to play a series Viper and I was in the open division. I'm like, why? Like, we went down and back, and I start picking up the bags, and I'm like, these aren't stamped. And the guy's like, and I'm like, you can't throw these, right? Like, I said to myself, I would never lose to an OG Game Changer or Viper, an OG Viper ever again, because I don't have to play them, And then I asked my conference director, I'm like, dude, do you have the measurement tool for bags? And he's like, why? And I go, all these bags that guys have bought and shrunk and done all these different things to them. And, all these stories you hear about various bag companies who make, custom bags for different players that are outside of the traditional spec of what another player could buy off the shelf from the same company. I'm like, at some point, I'm going to run into that and I'm not going to like it. And I'm going to go to the director table and be like, can you measure these? And my guess is probably less than half the directors even have the tool to measure them.
Well, even at the national level, there was one tool that was used, and it was not the 3-letter organizations tool. It was a bag company tool. So who's to say that's official?
Well, I think, unfortunately, at that particular event, what really occurred was those bags should have been measured up at the director's table. The director, I think, had already ruled that those bags were legal before he went to lunch.
And I'm not putting them on it on anybody else, but I'm putting it on the organization.
Yeah.
Not on any other person.
Yeah.
Like, that should be deemed by the organization at that level, not the directors or anybody else that's running it. You know what I mean? Like, somebody's trying to make it right.
But I think what happens in the sport, and I believe strongly that Stacy, the leadership of the ACL, they are constantly, and it's proof in the rule book, it continues to change, right? And even though like this step over rule that we just talked about doesn't seem as clear as some players want it, some people want it, right? Like don't step over the line, right? That's really, really easy. But we had a large number of players who were throwing a certain way. And do you want them to change in 3 weeks before the start of the next season? That's not fair. Most major organizations like golf, when they changed the long putter and the anchoring rule, there was over 18 months of knowledge. It was almost 3 years that people knew they were talking about that rule and that it was likely to change. And so if you didn't make concessions and start practicing how to putt what was going to be under the new rule, that's on you. I think the ACL learns as they go. I think they introduce new rules to deal with these controversies that pop up. And because the sport is young, I don't think they know everything, right? And even big sports don't know everything.
Well, here's the thing. I think the ACL has what I like to refer to as the Madagascar rules. If you ever watch Madagascar, the kids movie, they're trying to fix the plane while they fly it.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
Well, no, but because it's moving so quickly, right?
Yeah,
and that's why I say that, right?
But I also think that that's part of our society too. The instant gratification that we have with the internet and all the different things. Like, I mean, I can agree to be on a podcast and I can be on the internet across to millions of potential people in 5 minutes, right?
Listen, we're 3,000 miles away from each other.
And you can do so much so quickly that it's expected to do it quickly. Versus when you look at something like, a organization that's over 100 years old, like the NFL, that organization, they'll do it every offseason. The coaches will meet and talk about their rules committee, and they'll address those things, and they'll address them from season to season, right? And they'll meet in season here and there to discuss, but they don't make rule changes until the season is wrapped. They play an entire season under the rules as they are indicated, and then they'll change them for the following season if there's necessary.
Listen, it benefited me, the Brady Tuck rule. Listen, come on.
We can debate all of it. I just think that, one of the nice things about the way the NFL operates is they do focus on consistency, right? So they go their entire 17-game schedule, 18 weeks plus the playoffs. They don't make any real rule changes in there, they'll especially that affect play. Nothing that affects play. If they need to make some sort of rule about how far fans need to sit further back, to adjust for a weird virus or something like that, then they'll close the front row and tarp it off or whatever you need to do. But that doesn't really affect the play on the field. And I think that that's important, that consistency for the players, that it's just, these are the rules. These are how the rules are officiated, and that's consistent through 1 year. And if they need to make some adjustments afterwards, they should.
Well, I really think the ACL is trying to do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've only had minor changes throughout the season.
Yeah.
I'm talking very minor stuff where, Stacy, Trey, and everybody else involved are trying to keep everything pretty consistent throughout the season.
Yeah.
And they've also, adopted the player committee.
Yeah. I was part of the first players committee.
Yeah, the players committee, whether you can, you guys talk about the rules or whatever it is, but also, players that maybe have an infraction can pick the people they want as their jury of their peers, right?
Well, that has since changed. So 2 years ago, you could pick your jury. Now the jury is just the player committee who is voted on by the players.
Okay.
Right. So now that players committee, part of their job, as I understood it, at least last year, I don't know if it's changed, but at least last year, if you were going to appeal your whatever rules infraction, particularly something that might involve a suspension or a fine, if you were going to appeal that, it was appealed to the players committee at that point.
And how many people, if you don't mind, if you can say, how many people were on the players committee?
I think there were like 12. I wanted to be on the committee last year. I wasn't voted in, so I stopped kind of paying attention. It's kind of great for me from a personal level. My focus really focused more on play than the off the court stuff. But and I advocated for and knew a couple of players on it. Jimmy Humans and he was my team captain. Jimmy was really, really good at getting back to me if I had some concerns.
Who?
Some guy, Jimmy. I think he had really
small arms,
thin arms. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jimmy was really cool. Like if I had something that I felt needed to be talked about in the players committee, I would kick it to him. And then I also reached out to Josh Thielen. Josh Thielen and I are friends from the West Coast. Josh, a really, really good guy. And so I would often kind of kick any ideas or thoughts that I had to those players to make sure that somebody was maybe taking it to the players committee during their next meeting. And I thought they did a real good job last year communicating back to the players, in general. I thought they were pretty clear about what they were trying to accomplish. I think they got a little bit off during that whole when they wanted more information about the step over rule and the bag changing rule. They posted something we have a private Facebook page for the pros. They posted something in there.
Well, it went a little public.
Yeah, somebody took it more public, and unfortunately, the original intent, and I actually agree with the original intent, was to really just to poll the pros to find out how they felt about a rule. It wasn't necessarily their job to vote on the rule, like it's going to go this way or this way, but they wanted to kind of gain a sense.
Well, they wanted to bring it to the light, right? Because
Yeah.
I know I watch a lot, even when I'm not, traveling and doing some of the live feed stuff or at some of the tournaments. I watch a lot of it, and you can see some frustration from some of the players when they get into, the final 4, final 8, when stuff starts to happen. So
yeah, the higher the stress, right? So you start getting past the first or second round, you're starting to talk about, getting on a run. The last thing you want to do is start thinking about, the bag that somebody's playing, or their throwing motion, or the way that they flip bags. All of these little things can become those triggers that kind of get you out of your concentration. And this game is, I would say at the pro level, it may be more mental at that point than it is physical anymore. Most of these players, I will tell you straight up that the pro division has never been more competitive than it is now. And it was last year. As it moved into this year, it'll only get better. There are no easy games. And I truly 100% believe that any pro at any time can beat any other pro. We've seen it. We've never seen anybody go undefeated for a season, never lose a single game. There's nobody that much better than anybody else. And I've seen anyone in that pro field throw a freaking 11-5 for 12 frames, and if you're off, you go for a couple of crazy shots and all of a sudden find yourself down 10-0 and the guy's throwing an 11 next to you, you're probably not going to win that game.
So the closest I saw to perfection was Devin Harbaugh out at Triple Crown, January of last year. He threw an 11.25.
Yeah. That's insane.
That is the closest. He was insanely out of his mind, had the headphones on, just chucking bags in the hole. I think with the 11.25, I think it was like one on and maybe one off. I think was the whole game, like the whole round of the playoffs, which is just obnoxious. But we do have a question from John George. If a bag is moving and the other player makes contact with that moving bag, what is the ruling?
So you're looking at, it's at this point, that's a doubles question, right?
Yep,
because somebody has to be touching the bags on the board. So, I guess you could run down and pick a bag up that's still moving. So it could work that way. My understanding is if you're touching a bag that's on the board, all the bags are dead. The round is over as soon as anything is touched. What we then do is we count the bags. The infraction player is 100% over. His round is done, no matter if he has bags or not, right? It's most common on bag 7 when there's still one bag left to be thrown when somebody bends down and touches the bags. So what happens is the team that did not touch the bags, any bags that they have left in their hand are considered in, right? So if they've got one left, that's 3 points. Every bag that they have on the board is considered in, as well as any bags that are in the hole are considered in. Maximum is 12. But if they've got a bag off, they threw a shorty, then maybe they only have a 9-point round. And then we subtract from the offending team, the touching team. That particular team only gets credit for any bags that are currently in the hole from before they touched anything. So, if they've got 3 in and you've got a bag sliding down and they touch the bags and you still have 1 in your hand, that'd be a 12 on 3, and it'd be a 3-point total round. It's not, the penalty had morphed over the last couple of years to not be automatic 12, right?
Yes, because in 2 years ago, it was an automatic 12, and it slowly morphed to what it is today to make kind of lessen the penalty. And it doesn't really happen as much in the pro division. It's more in, kind of open and below, I think, where it happens the most.
Yeah, I mean, it tends to happen a little bit more. Just depends on the players in a lot of cases. I do think how much they may have had to drink can factor into it. So you'll see it at locals a little bit more. But I have a partner that I play with here locally. He's an exceptionally good player, but he is so focused on putting all of his bags in the hole that he will pick things up. He will touch things. He will throw out a turn. If he's made a really nice 4th bag shot, he'll turn around and start firing bags. I've played him in singles where, my game has gotten a little dirtier because he's so good at throwing bags in the hole. I don't like that. My game's gotten dirtier and he'll pull off hit an airmail for a wash. And he'll be so pumped up, he'll turn around and he'll start firing bags. And I'm like, you're throwing a turn. And he's like, don't. That's how he reacts. But it happens even to the best players. So, it is hard when you're just focused on putting bags in the hole to also be aware of the score and the situation. Just happens.
Well, that's tough because you get in that zone, right? And you're in that zone of just, chucking bags or just even rhythm, right? I even try to screw up rhythm players where I will call a timeout when I haven't even thrown a bag yet, just to go down and look at an empty board.
Yeah.
Just to screw up the other person's timing. And people get so upset about it. I'm like, I get timeouts. I'm just using it to my advantage.
Yeah, I mean, one thing there is you can only call that timeout when you have control.
I have the bag in hand.
Yeah, you have to have bag in hand, right? So if you've had a rough round and given up a 4 spot, you and your partner can't call timeout before your opponents throw their first bag.
Nope, you have to have bag in hand.
Yeah.
And new change to the rule this year, because it was not very clear last year, is both teams get to use the entire timeout.
Yeah, that was a
little tricky last year.
Controversial in the past, right? People were like, it's my timeout. It's only my 60 seconds, right? And, I walked down. I could see that I wanted to go backside. I used 10 seconds of my timeout. I went down. I was ready to throw it. And you were standing in the lane. That's interference. Well, no, once you call timeout, it's timeout. It's 60 seconds.
It happened during the team competition, I think, is where that rule got justified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was the Burn. Was it Burn Ringers? Was it in the championship or was it Burn Mays in the semifinal?
I'm not sure if it was semis or the end, but it was during that. It was during that whole ending of the.
It was either the Burn or the Ringers that happened it because I was in Rock Hill and it was either in the semifinals of either the Burn or Ringers sides, or the finals where they were together.
Yes, it was during that competition where they tried to kind of short chuck it just to get the other team as a penalty. It was the Burn Ringers. Doug says Burn Ringers.
Yeah, so it was in the championship.
Yeah, so it's crazy. So while we're kind of wrapping up here, we're kind of coming to the end of the hour. We don't want to hold you too long. So why don't you tell us a little bit about all your sponsors and kind of what you're looking forward to this year?
Well, I mean, I've had an opportunity over the last couple of years. I've gone to work at Ultra. So Ultra is my primary sponsor, and they take pretty good care of me. I run the apparel department for them, help make all the new stuff that we're working on, work on a lot of different things with Mark. And I enjoy it. I'm obviously making a career out of cornhole, and I'm super, super happy. Outside of that, I work real closely with Alec Weinstein and the Cornhole Network. We're very, very happy with the way that has been going. On YouTube, you can look up Cornhole Network on YouTube. There are tons and tons of videos. Last year, we actually added like 15, 20 videos of many pros from across the country. We looked hard to bring in players from different bag manufacturers. We obviously shot when it was more convenient to us, and Alec happens to live here in Encinitas with me, and he started the network without even knowing me. But as we connected, some of my videos took off, and we started talking about other things we could shoot. So we went to the Open last year in Upland. We went and shot at a conference tournament in Arizona. So we like to feature players who shoot differently. We went out and, at the Upland one, we had Harbaugh and Hunter Thorne show us how to throw a roll bag. And so lots of players out there can go to YouTube, see the Cornhole Network, especially newer players who are learning. There's tons and tons of instructional videos there, great footage. And the beauty of Cornhole Network and YouTube is you can put it on your phone, go outside, practice, pause, go back. Right. It's not like you got to watch it inside, then go outside and try to remember what you saw. You can literally take that with you and really work on your game. So those are my two primary sponsors that I will be taking into next season.
That's awesome. And just so everybody knows, the Cornhole Network is in the chat with the links to the YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out, please like, share, and subscribe.
Absolutely.
To that, because honestly, the more cornhole content we can get out there in the world, the better it is for all of us. When we are all one community and we all like to help each other and share. Well, most of us do.
Yeah, but our biggest video from last year was Jimmy Humans. Big Arms himself throwing his bags, showing us one of the flattest bags in the game. He went out there. I think it was like 65,000 views for his video, and counting. He may be 67 now.
Well, that thing is obnoxiously flat. I don't know how the hell he does it. It's just such an amazing shot. I try to do it every time, and I can't make it happen.
Yeah, look, I think we went out and featured a whole bunch of different players on that channel, and so there's a lot of different throws out there, different styles that a player can go and say, that player throws a little bit like me. How does he do it? How did he get to that high enough level with a similar, arc or a similar style bag that he was throwing? There's that opportunity to go out there and see it. And, I've been blessed, with my experience with Cornhole Network. I've been able to go to a tournament like Spencer's or Worlds, and true fans, true players who are coming up through this game, not necessarily the highest end player in their neck of the woods. They'll see me in the beer line and buy me a beer. It's really special that, I can say that my instructional video may have helped somebody. And I feel blessed to have been able to do that.
I've never had that happen, people. So if you see me in the beer line, buy me 2 or 3 beers.
You'll still accept the beer.
I'll still take the beer. But that's awesome. Listen, thank you, Eric, for coming on. I know Doug had some internet issues. We'll figure that out as we move forward. But thank you for hanging out with us. Everybody, we'll see you all next week. Eric, hang out. We'll talk a little more. Perfect. But everybody, listen, if you're not playing cornhole with some of the greatest bags in the world, don't worry. I like those, but there's other bags that I like better. Second place is up for grabs.